Are there advantages to aging? Yes, I am Debbi-Jo Horton, and welcome to Advantages to Aging. Join my guests and I as we discuss aging and what makes for a healthy lifestyle, which results in a quality life. Thank you for joining me today. Hello, listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Advantages to Aging. Today, we're going to talk about something that's not talked about a lot. Medically induced menopause before the age of 40 can really be unexpected and really a profound experience. And it can trigger emotions and challenges. So during this interesting time and transition, we're going to talk a little bit about that impact on your mental well-being with my guest, Dee Hope, Managing Director of Ignite Purpose and the founder of Fire Within Coaching. Welcome, Dee.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you having me here. I'm just really excited to chat with you.
Excellent. You've been on that journey, and I know that you've gained a ton of wisdom as a result of it. And you know what? Sometimes we say, oh, if I could only go back and change such and such. But the reality is, if we do, we aren't the same person we are today. And I don't know about you, but I love you as the person that you are today.
Thank you. I love you as the person you are today, too.
Thanks. Well, can you share with our listeners just how having a medically induced menopause really impacted your mental well-being and how you manage the emotional fluctuations that typically occur with menopause?
Yeah. So thank you for that. And I do really think that this topic is one that's not talked about enough. So, we think of menopause as the older self in transition. And we forget that people like myself who have suffered with endometriosis from as soon as I got my period, we knew something was wrong. And essentially it was because I had endometriosis, and that's something that I carried with me. So for a while, we didn't think that I was able to have children, which luckily I was. God blessed me with two beautiful babies. And after my son was born, which he's 12 now, so after he was born, my doctor said, it's really time. You're still in a lot of pain. We've been kind of making it so you can have babies by giving you the medication and doing everything like what do you want to do now, essentially? And I was in my mid-30s, and it's kind of like, well, what do you mean? What am I going to do now? And she's like, well, do you have any, do you want to have any more kids? And I was like, well, no, but I also don't want that taken away from me. Like, I don't want like right now I say that, but what if, in a few years I want them, I want more. And I remember her saying, is it worth the pain that you have to deal with every day? And I was like, I don't think it is, because I was in so much pain. And because of the pain that I was in, I was showing up to work. I was showing up in life in pain. I was hurting. So when you're hurting, that comes across as anger, that comes across as, emotional, that comes across as all these other negative things. And it was essentially out of my control for a long time. It was just something that I just came accustomed to. So when we finally came to the point that, yes, you're going to have medically induced menopause because we're going to take everything. And I remember having the conversation, well, what if I don't want everything? Like, can I at least keep my ovaries? And she said, not if you want to not be in pain. Like, if you want to cure yourself from this endometriosis, you have to remove it all. So I removed it all, and they gave me shots. Now, the shots that I took, and I don't remember the name, the shots that I took, I remember my friend Missy, who actually has passed since then. But my friend Missy was like, well, she was a nurse that worked in healthcare, and she's like, I'll just shoot you. And I was like, okay. So I had the shots, and we would go into a private room, like the patient rooms, and I would just kind of untuck myself and be like, all right, go ahead and shoot me. And, and it was funny, and we were trying to make it as fun as possible. But I remember when I first started feeling it just felt wrong. is the only way that I can describe it. It felt wrong that I was trying to pretty much postpone menopause and through these shots that were making me feel awful. And I was already experiencing hot flashes. So
Mm.
I'd be, on the phone in the morning, with a client or something. And I'd be like, can you please hold? Would you mind just one moment? And I have to put him on heat. And I'd just be like, oh my God, please help me make it stop. Like, I feel like it literally felt like my skin was just going to fall off because my blood was just boiling. Like, that's how hot I felt. And of course, again, that didn't make me fun to be around.
Mm.
So a lot of my relationships became really strained because I was going through something that nobody else was going through. And actually, let me back up real quick to the day of my surgery. The day of my surgery, I was so emotional and in tears. And I never realized, now looking back now, I can say, well, of course, I was essentially giving part of my womanhood, of what I considered my womanhood, I was getting rid of it. So for me, and of course, that's not what makes me a woman, but because at that time I felt like it was such a huge part of my identity, I remember my doctor just scooping me up before taking me back and just holding me for 5 minutes and just letting me cry and letting me just feel it. And I think that that was so profound for me to have somebody not try to fix it. She didn't try to fix my emotions. She didn't even try to understand my emotions. She was just present. She was just there. She was just holding me. And she was just trying to make sure that that I was okay. And I think that throughout my whole journey, as I look back, that's really all that I needed. I just needed someone other than my family, of course, because my husband does that as well. But I needed someone who was not emotionally connected to me to say, it is okay. It is okay. That doesn't define you.
Yeah. Yeah. That was so important that she did that.
No.
So many times people, you're right, they don't understand. One, they don't always necessarily even know what it is that you're going through, never mind having experienced it.
Right.
But oftentimes, especially whether it's, leading up to having to have the hysterectomy, whether it's partial or full, at the age of 32, I ended up having a partial hysterectomy. They left my ovaries. I could never understand why, because they weren't functioning right. I'm like,
Right.
but it did make the transition a little easier from what I, hear other people that have had full hysterectomies talk about. But sometimes, and I don't know if this happened to you, but talk to me about juggling that you just went through, along with the demands of work and family, and then managing that medical condition
Mhm.
and having people just assume that it was work burnout, or just assume that, you're just in a bad mood. So
Yeah.
how did you deal with that? And then share, please, with the listeners, did you gain any insight over that all important self-care,
Yeah.
setting boundaries, getting support, all the things that as women we don't always do well at?
Right. Right. Well, and I think that was a big part of my journey is I didn't really know how to ask for help. Where I live here in Virginia, and, I didn't have family at the time. All my family was in another state. So I didn't have any support. And yeah, I did, my coworkers, did say, oh, well, she's just being grumpy, or she's just being this, or she's just being that. And they didn't have the understanding. And that could have been, looking back, I could have tried to be more open. But when you have someone that's in physical pain and then mental pain on top of it,
Mm.
you need somebody to sort of take your hand and say, hey, come on, we're going to get through this, because I really did feel at that point that I was so misunderstood, that everything that I did was taken the wrong way. And I thought, well, it's me. It's because I'm broken. It's because, I have endometriosis and I'm broken and I had to have this removed and now I have to figure it out. And I remember thinking like, well, what if it changes who I am? Like, I had all those thoughts through my head, and I really did. It was a difficult period for me. It was a difficult period for me because like you said, on top of the inner pain that I had, and then the physical pain, I also had the pain of being felt misunderstood, being felt that nobody can understand what I'm going through. And I remember also, even going to the doctors after that, and with where it clearly says in my notes that I had a medically induced menopause. Really, I just felt very, very misunderstood. I felt that, even I would go to the doctors, for a checkup, and they'd say, is there a chance that you might, have your period?
Pregnant.
How they ask those questions.
Yes.
And I would say, nope. Well, what do you mean? There's not a chance you could be pregnant? No. Oh. And it's kind of like, really? This is a doctor's office. And I'm going to have to say it. No, I don't have a uterus. And I remember being at that point where I would literally just say that, like, because people want to know, they ask questions, and they're not trying to be rude or anything, but they ask to understand. And a lot of times the pain that people feel, you can't see it.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I was in, a lot of pain, emotionally, physically, all of it. I was in a lot of pain, and going, even something simple like going to the doctors and having to explain, I don't have a uterus. I don't have ovaries. I don't have a uterus. The plumbing's not there. And I had to like literally have these conversations. And I think because I had to be so blunt about it, that also made me come across as something that I wasn't, like more, I guess, assertive, more aggressive, which I am an assertive person. But I feel like when you, in that situation, it might have come across more as aggressive.
Hey, DJ here. Are you like what I used to be like, with multiple different bottles of supplements and minerals and nutrients and trying to remember when you're supposed to take what when? Gone are those days. Neora's simplified system packs active ingredients in the smallest amounts of products that you have to take, making keeping your wellness and weight management simple.
So how did you overcome that? I mean, I'm sure that we have listeners right now that are going, oh my God, you are speaking to me. I am feeling that right now. I feel like such a terrible person because I'm snapping at everybody.
Yeah.
First off, know that, if you're not sharing, and sometimes that's hard to do, people don't know. And I had the same experience where the OBGYN that actually performed the surgery, probably 2 years later, said, when was your last period? I just looked at him and I went, are you serious? And he goes, yes. And I said, do you not remember taking out my uterus? And he went, oh, good God. I'm sorry. But the reality was, and it was like in that second and seeing his reaction, I realized he has probably thousands of patients. But, like it also made me more aware of the fact that you don't, like, if you had to have your arm removed, everybody would know you didn't have an arm.
Right.
Like, you can see it, but you can't see that there's something inside that's missing. And that was my pivot point of saying, oh, wait, it's not noticeable.
Right.
And so I have to be a little bit forgiving and then decide whether or not I wanted people to know or not.
Right.
How did you handle?
Yeah. So for me, my journey was a little longer just for like healing from that, just because. So the year after I had all of this done, I also had to have gallbladder surgery. So for me, and gallbladder, I mean, it's pretty standard, right? Gallbladder surgery, but not if you're someone who just had a full hysterectomy, someone who's still trying to figure out, what's what and still trying to heal from the trauma. So I remember when I went in, I was like, great, let's just take all the organs, and I remember just having that mindset, and it wasn't healthy to have that mindset, but I had that mindset like, oh, here we go again. So I think I really, at that point, I almost became a victim of my own circumstances. And I sort of, for a little bit, I wore that as part of my armor.
Mm.
And looking back now, oh my gosh, if I would have known that there was a resource for me, like a coach or someone that I could just talk to in a non-judgmental space, someone that could, not even someone that went through it, just someone that could hold space for me where I can be emotional, where I can say, this happened at work today. And like, this isn't what I meant to happen, but this is what happened. And now, now I'm probably going to be seen this way. And being able to really look back and also recognize that the individuals, even if mostly everybody knew what I was going through, but even if they didn't, remember to teach them empathy for you as well, because sometimes empathy just, it needs to be taught, and and we also need to remember that, hey, we're all human, so we all want somebody to be empathetic to us. So I think I was looking for empathy, but I was looking at it from the wrong perspective because my mind was not right, because I was angry and I was hurt and I had all these other emotions where, again, I was more of that victim. So looking back, if I could have a conversation with myself, I'd say, get help, get help. Talk to somebody, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a coach, talk to somebody that you can have those free emotions. You can just let it all, just kind of do like a brain dump, just take it all, take it out, and then sort through it, because even that's just a release, talking about it and recognizing that it's not normal for someone in their 30s to have a medically induced menopause. That's not normal. And recognize that the fact that I'm here now and I went through all that, that requires a lot of resilience.
Yes.
That requires a lot of strength. That requires a lot of things that I never knew that I was until now, after I was able to step away from my negative situation and I was able to go to that positive way, and I was able to do the self work, and I was able to understand what I was going through makes me strong. And I can tap into that and say, you know what? I'm a survivor. I went through all this and I'm still standing today. And now I can go back and I can help people that also may be going through that, maybe not the same situation, but a situation where they're hurting inside and they don't know how to explain, I am hurting inside and I need support. I need empathy.
Mm. So important,
Mhm.
because and it's so important to treat people gently, because you don't know what they're going through. And yeah, it is like, unless you have had that conversation with them. And the reality is that conversations around menopause were always hush hush. Like, you didn't talk about them.
Yes.
Now, thankfully, we are finally finding our voices and sharing those experiences. So before we wrap up, what advice would you give to individuals who might be hesitating to discuss their challenges related to early menopause? Or maybe they're even trying to decide, do I have that hysterectomy early in life, or do I continue to suffer with the pain? What advice would you give to them?
And that's tough. I would say seek a professional, seek help, seek someone who, a therapist, a coach, someone who is not emotionally connected with you, and talk to them. Talk to them about your fears, talk to them about your pain, talk to them about, just your barriers, and really, before you make the decision of, you know, yes, I'm going to have a hysterectomy, make sure it's really something that you want. So even if it's something like the pain, I could have dealt with the pain if I wanted to have another baby. I could have definitely done it and I could have made those arrangements, but I didn't. And I'm glad that I didn't, looking back, because my life now wouldn't be where it is right now. So I'd say talk to people that can give you that perspective of, maybe now you feel this way, but maybe in 5 years you won't feel this way. Maybe in 10 years you won't feel this way. So talk to people that can help you gain perspective before making any decision, and realize that these decisions are hard. They're not easy decisions. And there's really no right answer. It's just whatever you feel is right for you and your situation.
Excellent advice. Whether or not it's trying to decide whether to have that
Mhm.
hysterectomy or anything else in your life. That is great advice. Thank you, Dee, for being such an amazing guest. Join us the next time on Advantages to Aging.
Do you think one of the biggest advantages to aging is all the knowledge we gain along the way? Me too. What did you learn today? Share with me in my Facebook group with the same name as this podcast, Advantages to Aging. Now hit subscribe so you don't miss all the tips to come in future episodes.